Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello dear students, welcome to another lecture. So in this class we are going to begin with the second chapter of class 8th alternative English, which is the tsunami. Now as the name suggests, tsunami we all understand is a natural calamity. Okay, it is something which is not man-made, and since it is not man-made, a human being has no control over it as well. Now, what we are going to read in this chapter is about the tsunami that struck the Andaman and Nicobar Islands on the 26th of December. And we are going to read the accounts, we are going to read the tales of those people who were victims in that tsunami, those people who lost their families, those people who lost their near and dear ones, and also about the feeling and the kind of we are going to get to know about the kind of atmosphere it prevailed when they all were in such a dangerous situation. So as I told you, we shall be reading about the accounts of a few people who were a part of this tsunami. So let us start reading. Alright, so as I told you, the Andaman and the Nicobar Island, the entire area, it was the one that fell into the trap. So 26 December 2004, as I told you again. So tsunami has been told to us that it is a very large and powerful wave which is caused by an earthquake. So if an earthquake takes place under the sea, it leads to a tsunami. Now on 26 December 2004, there was a tsunami which occurred and it hit Thailand and a few parts of India such as the Andaman and the Nicobar Islands as well as the Tamil Nadu coast. So we shall be reading about some stories of courage and survival. The people who were courageous, some could survive and some could not. Did animals sense that a tsunami was coming? Some stories suggest that they did. So we are also going to read about the fact that the animals do have some sixth sense that made them, get to know in advance that there was something which was going to happen. So why did it happen and how can we be so sure about it? We shall be reading that in the story. Okay. So the first part of the story that we shall be reading, so these stories are from the Andaman and the Nicobar archipelago. Archipelago refers to a group of islands, okay. So there were a group of many islands and the seas that surrounded them. So we shall be reading about that. So Ignatius was the manager of a cooperative society in Kachal. His wife woke him up at 6 a.m. because she felt an earthquake. Ignatius carefully took his television set off its table and put it down on the ground so that it would not fall and break. Then the family rushed out of the house. So the first story that we are reading is about Ignatius. Okay. Now Ignatius was the manager of a cooperative housing society in Kachal. This is a region in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. His wife woke him up at 6 a.m. in the morning and informed him about an earthquake. The first thing that Ignatius did when he got to know about an earthquake was to keep the television set down the table. So he was afraid that the tremors, of the earthquake, when because of the earthquake everything is going to shake, he was afraid that the television might fall off and break. This shows the fact that they did not foresee something big and something very grave happening. For them, it was just a normal earthquake and they wanted to save their things. They had no idea what form this earthquake was going to take. So he kept the television down the table so that it would not fall and break. And thereafter, the entire family rushed out of their house. When the tremors stopped, they saw the sea rising. In the chaos and confusion, two of his children caught hold of their mother's father and mother's brother and rushed in the opposite direction. He never saw them again. His wife was also swept away. Only the three other children who came with him were saved. So when the tremors stopped, when the earthquake, it calmed down, they saw that the sea started to rise. The water level in the sea, it began to increase. In that chaos and confusion, chaos, we all understand when there is a complete disorder, imagine something which is happening, which is beyond your control. Okay, you're going to get so confused and everything will be so unorderly that you would have no control over it at all. So in that entire chaotic and confusing situation, two of his children, they caught hold of. So they held the hands of their maternal grandfather and their maternal uncle. And they ran into the opposite direction. After that, Ignatius never saw his children again. His wife also got swept away with the water. Only the three children who came with Ignatius were saved. So only Ignatius and three of his children could survive that tsunami. Now the next story that we shall be reading is about Sanjeev. So Sanjeev was a policeman serving in the Kachal island of the Nicobar group of islands. He somehow managed to save himself, his wife and his baby daughter from the waves. But then he heard cries for help from the wife of John, but the guest house cook. Sanjeev jumped into the water to rescue her, but they both swept away. So Sanjeev was a policeman and he served in the Kachal island, which is a part of the Nicobar group of islands. Somehow he managed to save himself, his wife, as well as his little daughter. But then he heard the voice of his cook, John's wife. She was calling for help. So Sanjeev, he jumped into water to rescue her. Rescue, save. So Sanjeev jumped into water to save that woman, but unfortunately they both swept away. The next story that we are going to read is about a 13-year-old girl, Meghna. So 13-year-old Meghna was swept away along with her parents and 77 other people. She spent 2 days floating in the sea, holding on to a wooden door. 11 times she saw relief helicopters overhead, but they did not see her. She was brought to the shore by a wave and was found walking on the seashore in a daze. So, next story that we are reading is about Meghna, who was nearly a 13-year-old girl. She was swept away along with her parents as well as 77 other people. Now, she spent 2 days in the sea floating on, holding on to a wooden door. So there was a wooden door in the sea. She held on to that wooden door and she was floating in the sea for 2 days. 11 times she could see the relief helicopters flying overhead. So we all know whenever there is a natural calamity, there are relief helicopters that can be seen. So 11 times these relief helicopters, they flew over her head, but they did not see her. How did she reach the shore? She reached the shore by a very strong wave. So there was a very strong wave of water that pushed her onto the shore. And then she was found walking on the seashore in a daze. Daze, confusion. Now, what else do you expect from a girl who had, lost her entire family? She did not know what to do, where to go, and on the top of it, she had been floating in the water for the past 2 days. So she was completely confused, and in that state, she was found walking on the seashore. Now, the next story that we read is about Almaz Javed. So Almaz Javed was 10 years old. She was a student of Carmel Convent in Port Blair, where her father had a petrol pump. Her mother, Rahila's home was in Nankori Island. The family had gone there to celebrate Christmas. So Almaz Javed was a 10-year-old girl and she was a student of Carmel Convent in Port Blair, where her father had a petrol pump. Now her mother, whose name was Rahila, so her mother's home was in Nankori Island. So Almaz, along with her parents, she had gone to Nankori Island in order to celebrate Christmas with her extended family. When the tremors came early in the morning, the family was sleeping. Alma's father saw the sea water recede. He understood that the water would come rushing back with great force. He woke everyone up and tried to rush them to a safer place. So, when the tremors came early in the morning, so earthquake, it struck early morning. So, when they could feel the tremors, at that time the family was sleeping. Now, Alma's father noticed that the sea water was receding. Receding means it was going back. We all have seen a catapult. Okay, so if you pull back the string and you leave it, it is going to bounce back with a greater force, right? So this is exactly what Alma's father also assumed. He could see the sea water going back and therefore he knew that it was going to come to them with a great force. He woke everyone up and rushed them to a place that he thought was safe. As they ran, her grandfather was hit on the head by something and he fell down. Her father rushed to help him. Then came the first giant wave that swept both of them away. So, as they were running, Alma's grandfather, he hit something on his head and he fell down. Alma's father went to him in order to help him. But then came the first giant wave, and that giant wave took both of them away with itself. Okay. So Alma's mother and aunts stood clinging to the leaves of a coconut tree, calling out to her. A wave uprooted the tree, and they too were washed away. So Alma's mother and her aunts, they were clinging to the leaves of a coconut tree, clinging to hold something tightly. So, very tightly they had held the coconut tree and they were calling out to Alma also to join them at that place. Now there was a very strong wave that came and it uprooted the tree. Uprooted, as we can see if we divide the word uprooted, so the roots of the tree were taken off. Okay. So the wave was so strong that a coconut tree, which was supposed to be the strongest, even that got uprooted, and Alma along and her aunts. So Alma's mother and her aunts, they washed away with that. Alma saw a log of wood floating. She climbed onto it. Then she fainted. When she woke up, she was in a hospital in Kamorta. From there, she was brought to Port Blair. The little girl does not want to talk about the incident with anyone. She is still traumatized. So Alma's, she saw that there was a log of wood. There was a piece of wood that was floating. She climbed onto that piece of wood, but the moment she did that, she fainted. She got unconscious. When she woke up, she found herself in a hospital in Camorta, and from there she was brought back to Port Blair. Now, it's obviously been a lot of years for that incident to have been, a thing of past. But this little girl is still so traumatized. Okay, traumatized means she is in such great shock. She is still so depressed and sad and disappointed with what had happened that she does not want to talk about it. So these were the stories. We read about Ignatius, then we read about Sanjeev, we read about Meghna, who was a 13-year-old girl, and we read about Almas. Now let us first discuss about a few questions in order to understand how well we've understood the first part. So say whether the following statements are true or false. Ignatius lost his wife, 2 children, his father-in-law and his brother-in-law in tsunami. So was this correct? Yes, this is true. Sanjeev made it to safety after tsunami. Could Sanjeev survive after the tsunami got over? False. Remember, he jumped into the water to save John's wife and he also got swept away. Meghna was saved by a relief helicopter. False again. The helicopter did not reach out to her. She reached the seashore because of a very strong wave of water. Alma's father realized that a tsunami was going to hit the island. Did he realize that a tsunami was going to hit the island? Yes. He could feel that since the water was receding, since it was going back, it is going to certainly attack them with a greater force. Her mother and aunts were washed away with the tree that they were holding on to. Yes, true again. They were clinging on to a coconut tree and that tree got uprooted and they washed away with that.